My husband raised his glass at our vow renewal and said, "To the next chapter," not knowing I just heard him say he was selling our home, taking our kid, and running off to London with his secret boyfriend. I smiled and hit record. They say the magic of the theater is in its illusions, and I guess I was naive enough to believe that some illusions could last forever. My name is Anton. I'm 53 years old, and I live in Chicago. I've been directing theater since I was 23, but this night, our 15th anniversary vow renewal, felt more surreal than anything I've ever staged. Leo had planned everything down to the last corsage. The backstage area of the Lyric Opera House had been transformed into something that looked straight out of an old Hollywood movie. Ivory drapes, flickering candelabras, string quartet softly playing something French. I couldn't even focus enough to identify the composer. Our closest friends from the company were gathered around us, dressed to the nines in floor-length velvet and silk. I kept catching people tearing up. I didn't blame them. It was beautiful. Leo stood beside me, radiant in a white dinner jacket and black slacks, his hair slicked back just enough to look like he hadn't tried too hard. He held my hand, squeezed it at all the right moments, laughed on cue, and gave a short speech that had everyone clapping before he'd even finished. It should have been perfect, but something was off. Every few minutes, he would glance at his phone. Not a casual check, more like he was waiting for someone specific. I whispered to him at one point, "Everything okay?" And he smiled wide, leaned in, and said, "Just locking down the after-party surprise. You're gonna love it." I nodded, but the knot in my stomach tightened. The ceremony went smoothly. We exchanged updated vows. His had the usual Leo flair, dramatic pauses, a callback to our first date, even a Shakespeare quote that made everyone swoon. I went simpler, more grounded. I promised to keep choosing him. That got a couple quiet ahs from the chorus members. He winked at me like he'd already won the night. After a round of champagne and applause, we all piled into town cars and headed to the rooftop of Clarendon and Pine, the fanciest restaurant in the Loop. It had a garden terrace, skyline views, and food that you had to book 3 months in advance. Leo said we were lucky someone canceled. I remember standing by the terrace railing for a moment, looking out over the city I'd built my career in. I felt proud, loved, maybe even a little foolish. I didn't know then that Leo had already decided to dismantle our life together, quietly, strategically, and without remorse. But I was about to find out. About halfway through dinner, I stepped away from the table. The noise, the toasts, the clinking glasses, the waiter reciting specials like it was theater, started to feel like too much. I told Leo the first needed some air, and he nodded without even looking up from his phone. That stung more than I expected. The terrace was mostly empty, the night air crisp with that early spring chill Chicago throws at you to remind you it's still in charge. I walked toward the ivy-covered archway that led to the garden. There was a warm light glowing from a side alcove, and I thought I'd found the perfect spot to catch my breath. Then I heard his voice. "Leo." Soft, but clear. "Yeah." I told the realtor to list it as soon as the bonuses hit. Anton won't even blink. He's all heart. No suspicion. I stopped dead. I couldn't see him yet. He must have ducked behind one of the trellises near the edge of the rooftop, but I didn't dare move. He laughed. "Once the penthouse sells, we're out. I'll wire the funds to the London account. Paolo and I will be settled in Marylebone by the end of summer." I gripped the wrought iron railing beside me. The cold bit into my fingers, but I barely felt it. My mouth went dry. Leo's voice dropped slightly. "He'll never fight for custody. He works too much, he barely sees Paolo. And honestly, I've already laid the groundwork. Any judge will see I'm the stable parent." Silence. Then a muffled laugh. "Yeah, it's going to be clean. He won't even know what hit him." I staggered back, heels crunching on gravel. I caught myself just before a potted palm tipped over. He didn't hear. I ducked behind a vine-covered lattice, heart pounding. I couldn't breathe. My hands shook, my mind raced. Was this real? Was I dreaming? Then I heard the click of his phone locking. Footsteps moved away, back toward the dining area. I stayed hidden a few more seconds, just to make sure he was gone. Then I slowly straightened up, sucked in a deep breath, and walked back to our table. Leo was sitting there, swirling wine like nothing happened. When he saw me, he lit up, raised his glass, and said, "There you are, darling." I was about to send a search party. I forced a smile. My cheeks ached from it. I sat down and motioned to the waiter. "Another bottle of champagne, please." Leo grinned. "Celebration round 2. I love it." He lifted his glass. "To the next chapter." I raised mine too. "To the next chapter," I echoed, my voice steady even as the floor tilted beneath me. He had no idea that I just heard the truth, that his script had slipped, that I now knew what he planned for me. But for now, I let him have his toast. That night, I didn't sleep. The minute we got home, Leo headed straight to the bedroom, claiming he had a headache. "Too much bubbly," he said with a wink, peeling off his jacket and tossing it onto the chaise. I nodded, kissed him lightly on the cheek, and told him I'd be up soon. He didn't notice the stiffness in my posture. He didn't ask why I didn't follow. I waited until I heard the shower running. Then I grabbed my laptop and went into my studio, my sanctuary, the one room in our apartment Leo rarely entered unless he needed to show off to someone. I sat down and opened our shared financial records. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for. Part of me still hoped I'd misheard. That maybe the rooftop moment had been some twisted misunderstanding. But within 15 minutes, I knew. There it was, wire transfers in small, frequent chunks from our joint account to a private international bank, one I didn't recognize. The amounts weren't large enough to raise red flags on their own, but the pattern was obvious. Deliberate. Coordinated. I dug deeper, opening emails, sifting through cloud backups, pulling old statements. Leo had been clever. Most of the transfers were disguised as costume expenses, design fees, or vague consulting payments to a shell company he had quietly registered last year. Then I found the file. It was a PDF in one of his cloud folders labeled Paolo Planning. I clicked. What I saw made my stomach turn. It was a draft custody affidavit. Bullet points outlining how Leo planned to portray me in court, overworked, emotionally unavailable, chronically distracted by career obligations. He even had timestamps of my late-night rehearsals and out-of-town premieres. He was building a case. A fake one, but one that could sound compelling to someone who didn't know better. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. Then I closed the file. By 3 a.m., I had packed every document that mattered: passports, birth certificates, my contract portfolio, a flash drive with all the financial records. I moved our most valuable possessions, jewelry, original scripts, Paolo's adoption paperwork, into a secure lockbox and tucked it in my office safe. Leo never knew the combination. He never cared to ask. By 5, I was sitting at the kitchen table with a mug of black coffee, staring out the window as the city came alive. He was still asleep, curled under our high thread count sheets like a man who had nothing to fear. But the performance was over now. My curtain had dropped, and I was ready for the next act. Leo showed up just before 9 the next morning, pounding on the studio door like it owed him something. I'd had the locks changed while he was still asleep. I waited until he left for his morning Pilates session, like clockwork, and the locksmith arrived 20 minutes later. By the time Leo returned, the penthouse was no longer his kingdom. I watched from behind the blacked-out window of my studio, coffee in one hand, phone in the other. He stood on the stoop in designer sweats, red-faced and breathless, slamming his fist against the door over and over again. "Anton," he shouted. "What the hell is going on? Why won't my key work?" He tried the code panel, typed something, then hit it harder when it didn't respond. His voice cracked. "This isn't funny." People started to slow down on the sidewalk. A few dog walkers, a couple tourists with cameras. Our neighbor from across the hall peeked out and narrowed her eyes. Leo didn't care. Or maybe he didn't notice. He paced the steps, muttering into his phone, then tried calling my name again, louder this time. "Anton, open the goddamn door. This is insane." I recorded everything. Through the window, I captured him trying to pry the screen off the intercom panel, then kicking the planter beside the mailbox when it didn't budge. I made sure the sound was clear, that his hysteria came through clean. He looked unhinged. Eventually, he dropped to sit on the stoop, sobbing into his hands. His shoulders shook like a child's. "Please," he whispered, over and over, like a prayer or a plea. "Please, just let me explain." I let him sit there for 15 minutes before opening the door. He jumped up the second he saw me, mascara smudged under his eyes, hair sticking up at odd angles. "What is happening?" he demanded. "Why are you doing this?" I didn't answer. Instead, I handed him an envelope. His name was printed neatly across the front in my handwriting. He looked at it like it might explode. "What is this?" "Legal notice," I said. "Prepared by my attorney." He didn't take it. Wait. Are you seriously doing this now? After last night? After what we shared?" I tilted my head. "You mean the toast? The one where you said, 'to the next chapter,' while planning to gut our life behind my back?" His face twitched. "That's not, Anton. You misunderstood, whatever you think you heard." I held up my phone. I didn't think. I recorded it. His mouth opened, then closed. For once, Leo had no words. Only silence. "You can have your lawyer contact mine," I said, setting the envelope on the small outdoor table. "Do not come back here. Do not contact Paolo directly. That's not a request." "Anton," he said, voice breaking. I stepped back inside and shut the door. The click of the lock echoed through the hallway. And this time, I didn't look back. I waited outside Paolo's school the next afternoon, parked across the street in my car with the windows down and the engine off. It was a warm day, unusually sunny for early April. Kids were spilling out in all directions, yelling goodbyes and chasing each other down sidewalks. Paolo came out last, as usual, quiet, head down, backpack slung lazily over one shoulder. He didn't see me at first. I gave a small wave. His face lit up with relief when he recognized me, but there was something behind it too, confusion, maybe even fear. I got out of the car. "Hey, bud," I said gently. "Want to ride home with me today?" He hesitated. "Dad said he'd pick me up." I crouched a little so we were eye to eye. "I know, but things are different right now. I want to talk to you, just us." He looked around, chewing his bottom lip, then nodded slowly. In the car, I didn't launch into anything heavy. We drove to the lake, got milkshakes from the little walk-up stand we used to go to when he first moved in with us. We sat on a bench and watched the water. "Paolo," I said, keeping my voice low, "I need to tell you something. And I promise I'm not here to turn you against Leo. I just want you to know the truth." He didn't say anything, just kept stirring his drink. "Leo's been planning to move," I said carefully. "To London. Without telling me. He's been working to take you with him." His eyebrows knitted. "That's not true. He said we're just going on a trip, like a vacation." I pulled out my phone, handed it to him with an email pulled up. One of the custody drafts I found. I let him read the part where Leo claimed I was an absent parent. "That's not how it is," he said, his voice small. "No, it's not," I agreed. "But he's been building the case anyway." Paolo sat still for a long time. Then quietly, "What do I do?" "You don't have to choose sides. You just have to be honest, with yourself, with me, with anyone who asks you what life at home is really like." He nodded, eyes glassy. "I want to stay here. Just until I figure stuff out." "Of course," I said. "You stay as long as you want." That night, Leo bombarded Paolo's phone with texts. Pleading, accusing, guilt-tripping. I let Paolo read them alone, then showed him the transfer logs, the apartment listing in London, the bank statements. "Make up your own mind," I told him. "No pressure." He closed the laptop and said, "I already have." The message came out of nowhere. Late one night, just as I was about to close my laptop and force myself to sleep. "Hi. You don't know me well, but my name is Luke. I went to high school with Leo. I think you need to hear something." I stared at the screen, unsure if it was a prank. The name rang a bell. Leo had mentioned a Luke once or twice, always with that flippant tone he used for people he thought were beneath him. I replied. We exchanged a few cautious messages. Then Luke asked to meet, public place, somewhere neutral. I suggested the Harwood Diner, an old 24/7 spot on the west side that smelled like grease and bad decisions. He was already there when I arrived. Mid-30s, scruffy, in a windbreaker that had definitely seen better days. He looked exhausted. "I almost didn't come," he said as I sat down. "But I'm tired of covering for him. Leo used me. And I think it's time someone else knew the full picture." Over lukewarm coffee and stale pie, he told me everything. Leo had reached out about 8 months ago. Said he was starting over in London, needed money for a down payment on a new flat and legal fees for transferring Paolo's residency. Luke had always carried a torch for Leo, the kind you don't admit out loud, and Leo knew it. Played it. Flirted just enough, made promises, sent late-night voice notes. "I wired him $15,000, Luke said bitterly. "My savings. Every cent." He never got it back. Of course. But that wasn't all. Luke reached into his bag and pulled out a USB drive and a sheaf of printed emails. He didn't even bother deleting them. He used the same Gmail we used for group projects back in high school. There were emails between Leo and his real estate agent, conversations with a London-based custody consultant, and worst of all, a voice memo where Leo said, laughing, "Anton's a sentimental idiot. He'll never fight me. He'll be heartbroken, but he'll get over it. I'm just positioning myself where I belong." Luke leaned forward, eyes tired, but clear. "I'll testify if you need me. I want him held accountable." I slid the USB into my coat pocket. "You may have just saved me. And Paolo." Luke smiled faintly. "No, I'm just done being one of Leo's props." Courtroom 7B didn't have the drama you'd expect. No slamming gavels or shouted objections. Just pale walls, too bright lighting, and a judge with tired eyes and a tight schedule. Leo came dressed for the part. Charcoal gray suit, subtle tie, not a hair out of place. His face had that deliberate softness he used when playing wounded roles. His lawyer, a stiff, high-priced man from Lakeview, kept whispering last-minute notes as the judge took the bench. I sat beside my attorney, Elise Monroe, calm, razor-focused, and probably the only person in the room more prepared than I was. Paolo sat a few rows behind us with a court-appointed advocate. He looked smaller than usual, his knees bouncing nervously. I gave him a small nod. Leo's side went first. His lawyer painted a vivid picture. A devoted husband and father, heartbroken by betrayal, forced to act in his child's best interest. Mr. Valenci, the lawyer said, sought stability for Paolo. In contrast, Mr. Maddox prioritized his career, often absent for long stretches, leaving Mr. Valenci as the primary caregiver. Leo dabbed at his eye with a monogrammed handkerchief. I knew that move. He'd used it in Much Ado 3 years ago when playing Benedict. Then it was Elisa's turn. She stood, walked to the center of the room, and calmly began to dismantle everything Leo had built. We have documentation of money transfers from Anton Maddox's Broadway income, nearly $75,000, to offshore accounts controlled solely by Mr. Valenci, she said. We also have a real estate contract for a penthouse in London, signed under a limited liability company, again, solely controlled by Mr. Valenci. She clicked her remote. On the screen behind her, the court clerk projected the first page of an email chain. Leo's name was right there. Subject line, Custody Strategy, UK Legal Transition. Mr. Valenci actively plotted to move the minor child to another country without Mr. Maddox's knowledge, Elise continued. He claimed the move was in Paolo's best interest. We have proof that he manipulated financial records, planned to sell jointly owned property, and fabricated a custody narrative portraying Mr. Maddox as neglectful. Then she introduced Luke. He stepped up to the witness stand, cleared his throat, and, in a shaking voice, told the entire story. The loan, the flirtation, the recordings, the lie. Leo's face cracked for the first time. A flinch. His eyes darted to me, then to Paolo, then back to the judge. It was over before he realized it. The judge didn't even need to deliberate. She ruled from the bench. All financial transfers from shared accounts are to be frozen pending forensic review. Custody of the minor child remains with Mr. Maddox. Any international travel with the child is strictly prohibited without a court order. This court finds that Mr. Valenci acted in bad faith with intent to deceive. Leo didn't speak. He just sat there, his expression folding in on itself, makeup failing to cover the humiliation setting in. By the end of the week, word had gotten out in the theater world. Designers whispered. Directors stopped returning his calls. A producer even asked me over coffee, "Is it true he tried to disappear with Paolo?" I didn't answer. I just said, "It's all in the court transcripts." It's been 6 months since the courtroom. The apartment feels different now. Quieter, yes, but also lighter. Paolo and I have settled into something steady. Most mornings, I make coffee while he eats cereal on the couch, half watching cartoons, half scrolling through his phone. We talk more now. Real talk. About his school projects, his friends, sometimes even about Leo. He still gets texts from Leo now and then. Some are dramatic apologies. Others are veiled guilt trips, the usual, "I'm healing" rhetoric. He rarely replies. When he does, it's short, polite, detached. He's learning to set boundaries. I can't take credit for that. He came to it on his own. The theater community was slower to catch on. At first, people were careful not to take sides. But as the truth surfaced, things shifted. A few old friends who once gushed over Leo's brilliance quietly reached out to me. "Hey, I'm sorry," they said. "I didn't know." Some meant it. Others just didn't want to be on the wrong side of a headline. I didn't hold grudges. I just didn't respond to most of them. Leo, of course, rebranded. He's been trying to reinvent himself online as some kind of emotional resilience guru. He posts dramatic selfies with long captions about surviving narcissistic abuse and reclaiming power. He launched a website, started a podcast, Leo Unfiltered. He talks about co-parenting with compassion, even though he's under a travel restriction and has supervised visitation. His followers seem to eat it up. But I don't engage. I don't comment. I don't correct the record. There's a certain peace in letting people believe whatever they want. I don't have the energy to perform anymore. Not for strangers. Not for former colleagues. Not even for the version of me that used to believe love could fix anything. Instead, I focus on what's real. I'm directing a small regional production this fall. Something quiet, character-driven. Nothing flashy. Paolo helps with set sketches sometimes. He's good at visualizing things. I think he might have a designer's eye. The other night, we sat on the balcony, the city lights soft and blurred. He turned to me and said, "You know, I used to think Leo was the stronger one." I didn't say anything, just waited. "But now I see it," he continued. "He only looked strong because he always had someone else holding him up." I reached over and ruffled his hair. "And I think you're the reason I know the difference now," he added, almost shyly. I didn't cry, but I did smile. A real one. Sometimes, you don't need revenge. Sometimes, you just need the truth to stand long enough for someone you love to see it for themselves. And that was enough.